A warm welcome to all our viewers to our series Natural Medicine. Today, with the topic of rejuvenation. Is it possible to rejuvenate? Can we get rid of wrinkles like the one I have on my forehead here? Or is that not possible? What do telomerase have to do with it? I'd like to discuss all of this with a health expert today. A health analyst, a warm welcome, dear Pierre Zebergs. Thank you. Thanks for being here another time. I'm happy to go through this topic with you. I'd like to understand first what happens that actually some people age much faster than others. At least visually, not physically. Let's say the genes have less to do with it than we might think. It's also suspected for most illnesses where it's said that your father had the same cancer or something. This may be 1% of the time. It's always the environmental influences, living conditions. For example, you can see it quite well in the case of adopted children. If you look at them, what do they get? They get their parents' hereditary diseases. How can that be? It's the living conditions that are set. The behaviour patterns that are set. Or you can also see this in twin research. With identical twins under different circumstances, they age completely differently. So I'm personally responsible, so to speak. So I can't say anything else. My genes are responsible. I'm personally responsible for what's happening. I developed my personal health formula, or rejuvenation or longevity formula. It's just mine, but maybe it fits quite well. I have the 3 M's and then I have P. If they're fine, the aging process is actually stopped for me, so to speak. Or I can even turn back a little with a few measures. With oxygen training, the first M is mindset. So if I only think negatively all my life, what should become of it? Because thinking is an epigenetic factor. We've known that since Bruce Lipton and for many scientific studies. I can influence my cells with the electromagnetic waves that I send out through my brain. The bottom line is they even say spirit creates matter, or mind over matter. It's true, and that's the most powerful weapon I have. And nowadays there is scientific evidence as to why that works. That has to do with this placebo research. It has to do with that, but it does go much further. Today we know only 0.0000001% of us is matter. Only the atomic nucleus, so to speak, is seen as matter, and a little more the electrons, where most of them are also waves. So that's another thing. So that's a 0 with 8 zeros and a 1. And that's our matter. What we actually are, and 99.99999% is just a quantum vacuum. But this quantum vacuum isn't pointless. It's not that there's nothing in it. It contains an infinite amount of energy, an infinite amount of information. And that's how we control it. That we actually limit ourselves to the other part in research. We limit ourselves to the one after the 8th place after the decimal point. It's a shame. That's why I have to deal with energy, with other things. There are fantastic videos by Greg Braden about this. This quantum vacuum isn't void, it's a pulsating energy maximum, with which I correspond. There's information there, everything is stored. And he says, how can I best go into the matter? By creating the strongest electromagnetic waves in the body. And the brain doesn't create them, the heart creates them. There's also a completely independent nervous system. There's a very simple method, I can explain it in a minute. You have to breathe calmly and relax. Hand on heart, like in the proverb. Then I have basically the energy follows the attention. So my attention's here, the energy's here, then I think from here. Because here, the magnetic field is 5,000 times stronger than in the brain, and the electric field is 100 times stronger. So I always say 3,000 times stronger electromagnetic signal to the cells, which communicate with each other with electromagnetic signals. So I communicate in the language of the cells. Careful with the microphone, okay. So hand on my heart, and then I have to visualize the result. Now we've talked about rejuvenation. Then say, I have a very good affirmation that I like a lot. After visualizing how my body looks like, perfect health now. Easy to remember. Perfect health now. Perfect health now. Repeat a couple of times. Now comes the trick. You know that from Jodie Spencer. I have to send the highest frequencies. For example, if I'm scared, I send low frequency signals, and that's on the matter level. But if I deliver a high frequency as a signal, and it's a positive emotion, as we know today, it's no longer esoteric. Gratitude. Gratitude. Gratitude that the result has already occurred. Gratitude for the result. I positively visualize what I want. Do the affirmation, perfect health now, and the gratitude that it has already happened, and that works wonders. I want to say, you mentioned Joe Dispenza earlier. In his research on these placebo effects, it's actually a miracle that we humans, double-blind, multiple randomized double-blind studies, can generate an incredible amount of placebo effects ourselves. Whether we take a drug or a placebo, the impact of the mindset is just amazing. Mindset is number one of all. The health measures I can take. Still, we consider this placebo to be so ridiculous. We say placebo can happen coincidence, but that's not a coincidence. You can control it so precisely. Spencer tests the subjects with all kinds of electronic measuring devices that are available. He said, well, one subject, for example, had a cartilage injury, the other one had a problem somewhere else. Another one had a skin problem. They were able to specifically activate the genes that are precisely responsible for the healing process. In 4 days, via the thoughts. They could measure that. They identified the genes exactly, which were activated by which thinking measure. That's how far it goes. A placebo really helps. It's really not something that you just imagined. It really works. There are so many research topics on this. It's not an undesirable side effect. It's a desired effect. Exactly. And of course, the medical staff also play a huge role in this. If I can trust a doctor, it's worth more than the drug. If they say it helps, it will help. Yes, it will. There are these double-blind studies. We've seen that. Professor Wallach has just published one of these double-blind studies. So when the doctors don't know that they are giving a placebo, these studies have shown that the patient has had the most success. It's crazy, isn't it? So the mindset is very important for rejuvenation. The first M. The second M is microbiome, in other words, the intestinal flora. It's still completely underestimated today, which unbelievable task this microbiome has. The microbiome, I say, creates 80% of the hormones. They're not made in the glands. They're picked up from there. There are, so to speak, channels, exchange paths, so that they are then transported to where they're needed, in the pineal gland, in the thyroid gland. So that's one point. Then the microbiome makes most of all of our vitamins, with the exception of vitamin C. Many animals can produce vitamin C, but unfortunately we can't, so we have to get it through food. So the function from there, and there's also direct bilateral communication via the vagus nerve to the brain. There's a signal going up, okay, I need help here now, but if I now, and that's why I'm not a big fan of antibiotics, if I take antibiotics now, do a 14-day therapy, then I destroy this microbiome of good bacteria, because the good and bad are basically killed off there, so to speak. And then I need up to 2 years to rebuild that. And it's always said that every disease arises in the intestine. And there is a lot to it. If the bowel can't do its job, I won't have a good absorption of nutrients either. So I have to invest a lot to ensure that the microbiome is in order, with a lot of fermented food that is based on fermentation processes. There are a lot of positive bacteria, and raw vegetables too. Raw fruits, but especially raw vegetables. You have the best viable bacteria in there. If they're ecological, you should hardly wash them. You really have to say, these bacteria are much more in there. If that doesn't work, I don't need to do anything. Then I don't have good absorption, so I can't absorb the nutrients, minerals and everything well either. The third M is then for me mitochondria. What are mitochondria? They're the energy centers in our cells. I don't do anything without energy. I need energy for every process. If I want to raise an arm now, or if I want to lie down to sleep, I still need energy. I need energy to detoxify. I need energy for the metabolism. I need energy for the gastrointestinal process. I need energy to think. And these mitochondria are incredibly useful. These are independent living beings. They're bacteria that have their own metabolism. They even have their own DNA. If these mitochondria don't work, nothing works. Just imagine, in one day, we produce trillions of proteins. Proteins make up life. However, a third of these proteins that are built, even with the healthiest people, are rejects. They're flawed because they're built incorrectly. They're built so complicated that I have to recycle them. But there's one enzyme that helps a lot, which is ubiquitin. But that needs energy, again, to be able to recycle it. Otherwise I'll have, let's say, a protein with 1 million atoms. There are muscle proteins like that, and that can't be recycled. That creates toxins in one cell, so I need energy there too. So if I harm the mitochondria and allow it, that they get a lot of toxins, or in an acidic environment they get worse and worse. So an acidic environment is a catastrophe for the whole body, especially for the mitochondria. So we now have the 3 M's: mindset, microbiome, and mitochondria. Now, that's my superstar of all glands, that's the pineal gland. The pineal gland is, so to speak, the boss of all glands, which regulates, so to speak, the release of all hormones in the whole body. For all glands, the pineal gland is the boss. And the pineal gland also does the initial control of the microbiome, of these bacteria. Because it says, watch out, I need serotonin, I need this, I need that, the thyroid needs that. This initial control also comes from the pineal gland. And if the pineal gland isn't okay, then I can't be healthy either. So what do I have to do there? The pineal gland is, unfortunately, outside the blood-brain barrier. So it's not protected against invaders, bacteria, viruses and so on, because it's outside. And then basically fluorides can come. Aluminium is a disaster for it. Hydrocarbon is a disaster. Titanium, heavy metals, all of it's stored there because it has a lot of membranes, and then it becomes inflamed. And then basically, in order to stop the inflammation, lime scale has to be delivered, a sensible biological special measure of the body to stop the inflammation, so to speak, so that no major damage occurs. So I have to make sure that I clear the pineal gland. There are various measures, there are entire protocols, and then I have to work on the different levels. When I did that, then the aging process is more or less stopped, in my opinion. And then one more thing. The most important food to make it all work properly is water. Our bodies consist of 70%, 65% of water. Women a little less, and then you dehydrate with age and so on. You can see how important water is when looking at an embryo that's just 1 or 2 weeks old. It's 95% water. And then in the first week after being born, 90% water. We're then at 70% to 65%. As you get older, going towards death, maybe down to 50%. But with a different number, you can see the importance much better. 99% of all molecules in a human body are water molecules. So where do I start to get the best result? It has to be water. It has to be water. And there are 2 properties of water that are extremely important. One is, it's the primary vehicle for nutrients, for everything that goes into the body, and the most important means of transport of poisons, of toxins, and all these kind of things out of the body. For that, the water mustn't be saturated. So I have to demineralize it. It must be relatively clear. It can't be saturated water. So I have to take this task very seriously. That's one point. And then I have to delete all the negative information out of this water. That means I have to energize and revitalize the water. And what I can usually buy now doesn't do this job, unfortunately. Then you have to do something. That's one component of water. And the other component of water is almost more important. The water must have a hexagonal structure. Only then is it cell accessible. Then it's cell available. Then there are so many almost wonderful ways to support the body. And we know the water from evolution. It used to be fresh spring water. It was somehow down from the mountain. It was glacier water. It was almost always hexagonal. We know that today. But the water we drink today is no longer hexagonal. And most of the body fluids are no longer hexagonal. As a result, if I have good water in the cells, the cell has no reason to divide so often. Then everything works great. Therefore, I've just extended my life only with this measure. There's a good example in Hunza. It's called Hunza water. Probably the most studied water in the world. And this Hunza water is a glacier water in a high mountain part of Pakistan. And the people who drink it live to be an average of 120 years old, on average. So there are also some who live to be 130 or 140 years old without a problem, without any health issues. And there you can see how important that is. What awesome possibilities I have with water alone. I have to start there, and then there's another point. You said it briefly in the initial interview. Telomerase. So what are they? I mean, now I've just interpreted it with the cell. If cells divide and I have chromosomes in the cell, and then at the end of the DNA I have, so to speak, protective caps. And these protective caps are base pairs. So when I'm born, I have about 5,000 base pairs per DNA. And when these cells divide, it becomes a little less and less. And if I'm basically too short, this cap will fray and the cell can no longer divide. The whole thing is called the Hayflick limit. And that's when they realize that there are actually enzymes that eliminate this problem by lengthening these base pairs, so these telomerase. And that enzyme is called telomerase. And there's a woman, Elizabeth Blackburn, who got the Nobel Prize for it, 2009. But there were other scientists who already knew a lot more than her, but that's another story. So there is telomerase. Now, I need activators for telomerase. And you have to know that the original human egg has this telomerase. Strictly speaking, it's immortal. It doesn't have this problem. Cancer cells, unfortunately, don't have the problem either. So they also have this telomerase. They can divide infinitely. They don't die on their own either. So you have to start there. And there are substances too that you can use that act as activators of the production of telomerase, which then does the job of lengthening telomerase, so to speak. For example, vitamin D3 is very important, vitamin E, vitamin C, also special substances like astragalus. We now know various activators for the production of telomerase, and then I've already done half the job. But as I said, water is the key. Water is the key to health. Another key that you said earlier, I just let you keep speaking, is also the acidic problem. How do you counter this? It starts with the right water, but also wrong nutrition. If I keep pouring acidic food into myself, what should I expect? And it's like that. The pH of people, the way we normally measure it is in wide blood vessels. The number of H3 plus ions is taken. Hydronium ions. This is the unit of measurement for pH. And if I were, for example, the best pH for me would be around 7.45, that's the optimum. If the pH, which is still basic, only drops to 7.3, the oxygen in these cells basically drops by 69.5%. So there, I have a lot less oxygen. And for every energy production in the mitochondria, I need oxygen. We'll get to the oxygen in a moment. I'll briefly summarise what you've said now. So when we look at the rejuvenation, the mindset is crucial. Then drinking water, really clean water, extremely. Not just clean water, it has to be empty. It must be a newly informed, living, structured water, which also has to be hexagonal at the same time. Good. A good diet, low in carbohydrates, if possible, sugar-free. You just said that. Then we have this pineal gland. How do we get it out of this situation? Or of being mummified. What it also doesn't particularly like is electric smog, but that's a completely different topic. So the mitochondria don't like that either. The electric smog damages the mitochondrial DNA, so it damages our energy centres. And as I said, sorry, what was the question again? How we can free this pineal gland, this mummification, and of course the next thing is also the mitochondria, that's the next M. How do we manage that they aren't being harmed but have full ATP performance? For pineal gland, I have to take decalcification measures. There's also a recent scientific study that 100% of MS patients have a calcified pineal gland. So you see, and it's similar with cancer rates. So doing something there is already an important step. The best supplement you can take is vitamin K2, because K2 ensures that calcium doesn't just go anywhere but into the bones in the teeth where it belongs. Then spirulina, chlorella is a very good measure. Also coconut oil is a very good measure. Brazil nuts, because they contain a lot of vitamin E and selenium. So there are a few things that can easily be done. Tamarind is extremely recommended for this too. And of course the energy supply has to be good. I have to supply pineal gland with the right energy. And there is an excellent method. The pineal gland sits back here. If, for example, I use this device back here, then I give the pineal a lot of energy, and then there's another advantage. The pineal gland is embedded in the third ventricle, in a cavity, that's filled with an aqueous solution. So I make the water around the pineal gland hexagonal, and then I can also drain the toxins much more easily, because hexagonal water makes it easier to discharge toxins. You're working on the pineal gland right now. I'm working on the pineal gland, yeah. If I go to today's topic of rejuvenation, then it would actually be an overall measure for it, a facelift. I put energy into the cells that have already got a certain slack through the oxidation, lack of energy. I put energy in, it should actually be, or when I have the electrical cell membrane tension at the right level, I have a young, healthy cell. That's just the definition. And then you have to see, but on the effect level, not on the causal level, because you explained the cause earlier, what leads to the aging process? And if you can clean up all of this, you can use this stuff to add energy and counteract it. We still have to look at what a person is made of. It's just cells. And now there are 2 cell variants that are often renewed. These are the nerve cells and heart muscle cells, whereby for nerve cells we know that today anything is possible via neuroplasticity. But that takes a lot longer. But the other cells there's no cell in your body that's older than 7 years, even if you're 100 years old. So I always have new cells. I can always inform new cells practically so that they also show a new picture. I've always wondered why the skin cells, for example, renew themselves over a period of 24 to 28 days. Why, if they are new skin cells, do they recreate the old skin? Why do the scars recreate? It's actually nonsense. It's the information, isn't it? It's the information. Now, if I give these cells new information, the scar shouldn't come back. And it's the same with the liver. For example, a liver that's reduced to 25% healthy cells can regenerate to 100% within 6 months. The body is so ingenious. But I have to empower it. I have to eliminate the impairment, and I have to provide it with the right energy. And as I said, the key for me, the holy grail, is water. The body can do anything with water. It goes so far. For example, if I'm overacidic, what is hyperacidity? I have a lot of these H3O plus ions inside. And there are a lot, and they have their own frequencies. A natural oscillation. When there are many, this oscillation increases with the amplitude, so with the power density. What's happening now? Now enzymes, hormones, in the 3-dimensional geometry are changed, so to speak. So if there's a hormone like this, and now a lot of pH, so an acidic vibration is added. Then it's pressed together so much that it can no longer perform its task. But if in the middle layer, an enzyme, a hormone, is enveloped by 3 layers of water, if in the middle layer, which is called the Y layer, I have 62% hexagonal water, then the enzymes and hormones will work, can do their job. They can no longer do their job if they're overacidic. The mitochondria can no longer do their job. That's why acidification is a disaster. Good. And we can counteract this, as we said, through nutrition and the mindset, and with a hexagonal structure from the water. With that, it will work. And the water of the body, I can also... That's the absolute highlight of this cell tuner technology. By using it on drinking water, I can make the drinking water hexagonal. The prerequisite for the drinking water to be good, of course, is that it's pure, that I keep this 40 parts per million. But then I basically have additional energy, and with these information frequencies, who are all on here for all cells, I basically bring in the natural vibration of the cells, because they go into resonance. It's the same frequencies. They increase the amplitude, supply these cells with energy. And then I bring some electrical energy in here, that I increase the cell membrane tension, and when I do that, I'll have a young cell, period. That's the exciting thing. Please show it again exactly. And that also works at a distance. So that's how I actually transfer the energy into the cell, which is really a bit saggy at the moment, and can drive rejuvenation. And how is health defined? Health is defined as energy/energy flow, plus cell communication. That means cell communication takes place again, because all cells have enough energy to basically send out their signals, that have their electromagnetic signals to exchange information with other things, or hormones and so on. They also have half-life. Hormones and so on, they don't work forever. They need the right ambient temperature. This is a very complex issue, but if my setup is right, then everything works, and the body can do everything. Pierre, unfortunately, I have to come to an end. Unfortunately, we've missed an important point. You mentioned this once, but I interrupted you, sorry. It was about the oxygen. Of course, we wanted to include it in the rejuvenation. There are oxygen therapies that are absolutely outstanding. Yeah, then we have to talk about that in another episode. But thank you very much for clarifying the topic of rejuvenation. Dear viewers, of course, you don't need it because you're perfect just the way you are. And you are beautiful. But if you have a problem with one or the other wrinkle, we can do something. And we heard the solution today on how to do this. And now I wish you all the best. Thanks for watching. See you next time.